everybody, here we are. It's Pastor Anthony. We're going to read chapter 6 from The Biggest Story by Kevin DeYoung. See that? Awesome. If you remember last time we read, God had been giving his people all kinds of blessings, rescuing them, saving them, protecting them, promising them things, but they were not honoring him. They weren't listening to his commands. They weren't following his teachings. As it said at the very ending, it said they were a mess. It's almost like God's people needed like a parent or something, maybe a king. Well, let's see what happens in chapter 6 and see how God tries to help his people continue to hear his voice and follow him and find his blessings. So we're going to read chapter 6. God's people had a hard time not copying everyone else around them. This was especially true when it came to having a king. Although God warned them how bad kings could be, they just had to have one. So eventually God gave them a king. Be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. The first king was Saul. He was very impressive, height-wise, and pretty disappointing in every other way. The second monarch, young David from Bethlehem, was definitely much better. In fact, before we get to the king, there's almost no one more important than King David. When David wasn't busy sinning, which he did in some really big ways, he was a good, wise, merciful king. Many good things happened to God's people when David was in charge. They were victorious and prosperous and blessed. But the best thing that happened was what God promised would happen. God told David that he would always have a son to sit on the throne. He promised David an everlasting kingdom. This was good news for David, and even better news for God's people. It meant that God had not forgotten the guarantee he made in the garden. A deliverer was on his way, and now everyone who had ears to hear knew he would be a son of David. But the next son of David was not the one they were looking for. Solomon started off on the right foot, but he ended up tripping quite spectacularly. After Solomon, the kingdom split in two, with Israel in the north and Judah in the south. Neither kingdom was very good. God punished Israel first, then Judah. In the course of 400 years, God's people would go from top dog to dog food. They had been kicked out of their promised land, just like Adam and Eve had been kicked out of their paradise. And worst of all, David's house and David's throne were no more. The future looked bleak, especially for the promises of God. That was another sad chapter. Can you believe that? God has given them promises. He has rescued them. He has blessed them. He has shown his power for them. He's even given them kings. And they still continue to sin and not honor him and get into trouble again and again and again. Did you see that last picture? Look how dark and kind of sad and scary that is. But you know what? That's exactly how our lives are. When God gives us commands, when he speaks to us from his word, and we don't listen to him, our lives get dark. Do you think God can save his people? Can he help them finally stop sinning and finally stop disobeying him? Can God help us to hear his voice and to honor him even when we don't want to in our hearts? What do you think? Maybe the next chapters will help us answer that question, but before then, maybe your mom and dad might help you think through that. Love you guys, miss you, and read with you again soon.